Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about tips and pointers for proposal writing. My name is Adriana Diaz, and I'm an innovation manager at EIT Urban Mobility. I'm here with Sigrid Ehrman, my colleague from the innovation team. So next slide, please. What we would like to provide today is an overview of how innovation proposals are prepared and provide you some key elements that contribute to an effective proposal. We will give you some clear links across the sections of the proposal with the expectation that you start thinking like an evaluator, which will make your proposal stronger. So what topics will be covered today? We will start reviewing some of the common issues that we have found in previous applications. We will show you these red threads that we consider very, very critical for that strong proposal. We will go and see some of the sections that are related to the evaluation, and we will not cover them all, but we will try to provide as many examples and answers to your questions about, for example, the partner descriptions, in the excellence section about the activity description, in terms of implementation, the work plan, the deliverables, and in terms of impact, we will cover some more sections. We'll tell you a little bit about the demonstrations, the key performance indicators, the commercialization strategy, sustainability, risk management. We will close with a short overview of the budget, what you need to provide over there. And then we will give you some time for questions and answers. We encourage you to use the chat because of GDPR compliance. We cannot record your voices, so we need to use the chat for this. And we will try to answer throughout the presentation or at the end. We have 2 hours scheduled, but it might be that we finish early. So next slide, please. Let's start reviewing some of the common issues that we have found in the past. There have been occasions when proposals are not very clear about the work plan. This is how they are planning to implement their project, or that they lose points because the abstract, this activity description that is a shorter summarization of what is going to happen is not clear. In many proposals, we see a use of jargon that is inconsistent, or the outcome is not evident. It is very important that you make the innovation, what you propose to achieve, very clear and from the beginning. The word count is not fully utilized, so we can notice sometimes that there is a lack of perhaps effort to provide, to elaborate on the different sections. We have noticed, and evaluators have noted, a rehash of previous applications without tailoring the response to the call. And of course, this is something that is natural. If you have worked previously with your consortium, you already have work done. It doesn't make sense to start from scratch, but it's important that you take a look at the call and try to update it and make it very, very consistent in the way that you update your proposal. Many proposals have lost points because they are not very focused, or they do not make a clear case about the business focus of their project. Sometimes evaluators miss the alignment between objectives and outputs, and it's very difficult to follow the structure of the project. In other occasions, proposals present information in an incorrect order, which makes it harder for the evaluator to understand what is being planned and how it's going to be achieved. We have found national imbalance and partner makeup. This is natural. We understand that in building a consortium, sometimes it's easier to play with people closer to your network, but this is a pan-European program, and we expect a balanced consortium. The city presence sometimes is weak, and it seems to be an afterthought. We will cover some of these issues, of course, with more detail later, but what we are talking about here is sometimes the participation of cities is very, very limited, and it's not very clear what is the commitment of the city to the project or their performative coverage of topics. What are we talking about here? Perhaps the work plan is not very well elaborated, or the demos are like checking boxes instead of well described. The same with the risk management. That part sometimes has been filled in with one line or two lines without a real consideration of what risk may affect the project and how to mitigate them. So I will, as I was telling you, we will deliver this in combination, Sigrid and myself, so you don't get bored with one of the two voices. So I pass it to Sigrid for the next slide.
Hello and good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about the red threads that you can find within the EIT Urban Mobility proposals. We will go through each of these elements that you can see on this slide more in detail during this workshop, but it's very, very important that there is a consistency in these two threads that you can see to create a successful application. So red threads are common related content within an application, and they should self-refer and self-reinforce. If you fail to make an obvious link between these themes, this may weaken your proposal. As you see, we have two threads. One thread is linked to the financial sustainability mechanism and the other to the activity. So within the proposals, we have a system called PLAZA where you will enter your proposal, and you will find different tabs where you enter your information about your proposal. So you will enter information about the key performance indicators, the exploitation of your product or service, the commercialization strategy, and that in turn leads to the financial sustainability mechanism. And all these four elements need to be linked, and needs to be a coherent link between these elements. As you can see on the slide, the first three elements, the key performance indicators, the exploitation, and the commercialization strategy, you will find in tab 2 of the PLAZA system. In turn, the financial sustainability mechanism, you will find in tab 4. So if you haven't used the PLAZA system before, we just want to inform you that there will be a separate session on how to use the PLAZA tool, and we encourage you to sign up for that. You can see the session in the agenda of the B2 match, so please sign up for this if you're not familiar with the tool. Also, there has already been a session about the financial sustainability mechanism in detail. A recording is available, so if you go onto the website of the call, you will see the link for this recording of the webinar, and we encourage you to look into it as well, because we're not going to cover this topic in very much detail today because it's already been covered. The second thread, as you can see, related to the activity, talks about the partner description. So it's very important that the partner description already links to the three consecutive elements, the work plan and deliverables, and the tasks. And the work plan, of course, should also relate to the three other elements. There should already be listed the responsibility for deliverables and the different tasks for the partners. And in the budget section, the task, which you will find in the tab 5 of the PLAZA system, you will have space to list the tasks in details. So we encourage you to really make use of the word count in this section to really in detail break down the task into subtasks. And that, of course, needs to relate to the preceding elements, the partner description, the work plan, and the deliverables. So again, it is really, really important that you create a narrative that links all those key elements in your proposal. And this is a way of making more of an impact and impress the evaluators if they can see that you really thought through the links between all those different elements. Can we go to the next slide, please? And the next one. So we're going to talk about the different elements that you've just seen in the red threads a little bit more in detail. So the partner description. The partner description is for you an opportunity to really explain specifically why each of the partners participate in the proposal. So it should outline how the partners link to the proposed project and detail their function in the project, as well as their role in realizing the project objectives. So common issues that we often find in the proposal is that there is a very generic description about the partner. So what we don't want you to do is just simply copy paste a generic partner description from your website or from previous proposal. It really needs to be tailored specifically to the proposal. We also often find that the description of how the partner links to the project is vague or sometimes even missing altogether. How can you write a winning partner description? We want you to focus on the function and the role the partner will fulfill in the project. So you should demonstrate why the partners were selected and why they are the ideal right partner to participate. This means you have to ensure that all required project functionality is accounted for. That means there should be no gaps in functionality across the consortia. So it should really be clear already in the partner description what partner is going to be responsible for what tasks and for what deliverables, and there should be no gaps at all. At the same time, you should also ensure that there is little or no unexplained overlaps between the partners. So there should be a balance within the consortium in terms of responsibilities, expertise, and what the different partners will be responsible for within the project. If there is any overlaps in expertise, you need to explain why that is important. And in regards to the cities, we require a minimum of 3 cities that should demonstrate the same solution within the project lifecycle. So this is very important. It has to be the same solution. We don't want to see different solutions for different cities. It really should be a pan-European proposal that tests the same solution in at least 3 different cities. So we know that regarding the cities and the demonstrations, there's probably a few questions, but we will cover this section a little bit more in detail later on. So again, make sure that the specific role for each of the partners is described and that it is clear who is responsible for what activity. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is a very, very important part. The activity description, as it is called in PLAZA, or the abstract, as it is more commonly referred to. So we already have heard in the beginning that the abstract, that unclear abstract are one of the most common issues that we find and problematic issues that we find in the proposals that we receive. But the abstract is basically the start of the red thread. So that's where you start linking all the various elements. So it's a very, very important element of your proposal. The purpose of the activity description is to provide a clear and a concise summary for the reviewer, and it should reflect why the proposal addresses the core text requirements. At the same time, it should outline the main issue the proposal addresses, how it plans to tackle the issue, where the demonstrations will be happen, and how the proposal outcome will impact communities and advance urban mobility and city livability. So the activity description is a really important factor in setting the tone for the rest of the proposal. The common issues we find here with the abstract is that they are overly wordy and often they are unclear and unspecific. So avoid to write a very generic abstract that just covers the general issue that your proposal addresses. We also find often that there is a very poor summarization of key elements. So how can this be done better? Avoid being overly wordy. This should be a really clear abstract that clearly proposes and shows and outlines the different element of your proposal. So make sure you write clear and concise and specific content. There should also be an understanding of the project in its entirety when you read the abstract. So already in the beginning, by reading the abstract or the activity description, for the reviewer, it should be absolutely clear what your project is about and what the outcome is. So the elements that need to be covered are the issue that is addressed, the relevance of the proposal, what is going to be done, how you will do it, what is the outcome, and also what is the final project and what is the business proposal that results from it. So if you read the abstract, you should really have a very, very clear idea of the proposal and its outcomes. A clear and concise proposal is a signpost of what happens in the rest of the proposal. It's not an introduction, but a summary. So maybe it's even best if you at least go back to it at the very end, or if you write it in the beginning, or maybe you even want to wait until the very end of your proposal to redact the abstract. And remember, the abstract is the one part of your proposal that the evaluators and reviewers will go back to frequently And so it's very important that it's very concise and clear. Make it as impactful and memorable as possible. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I hand over to Adriana again.
Okay, so now we're talking about the work plan. So the work plan is a section where you say what you are going to do. We refer to it as activity plan in EIT internally, but in other programs, you can think of the work packages and how you're going to implement some more the implementation part of your proposal. So it is a place where you convey practical information about how you're going to execute your proposal. In this section, you have to convince about the excellence of your idea. And it is important that you include a title, the list of the main partners leading each of the tasks, the description of the work area, the outcomes, milestones, and any deliverables. Usually you have around 5,000 characters to provide information and elaborate. We are not encouraging an overly wordy or very long work plan, but we are telling you you have the space to describe how you plan to execute your project. What type of common issues have we found in the past? So sometimes, and this happens also because in many occasions, different hands touch a proposal, and that's understandable. But it's very good that you take a look at the end and you try to ensure that it has the same tone, language, and that you're consistent in the terminology across tasks. In some of the proposals, we have found work plans that are simple bullet points, like little notes about a list of tasks. Of course, we encourage you to use bullet points, and it's very useful in terms of structure and how to present the different tasks of your work plan. But we expect some elaboration about what each of the tasks implies. Insufficient length, so same issue here. We have found proposals that are requesting 800,000, 1 million euro funding with 5 bullets listing 5 tasks, which is very hard to justify and for an evaluator to support. We have found imbalance between the partners. So sometimes it's very evident from the work plan that one partner is leading most of the technical work, and there is little engagement from the rest of the consortium. And of course, that is not very convincing about a realistic implementation of the proposal. Sometimes we find a mismatch between what is outlined in the work plan. So here is more about a repetition of tasks or a gap in the description of the implementation. It is hard for an evaluator to see how the project is going to move from point A to the final outcome. Some of the proposals in the past have been very focused on research activities, and of course it is important. It's part of the implementation, but you need to remember that the EIT Urban Mobility, the innovation program, is very business orientated, and if you're missing that in the description of your work plan, you will lose points. Or we don't find references to deliverables and milestones in the work plan. So think like an evaluator. If you need to make sure that a proposal is well structured in terms of what it's going to deliver throughout the time of implementation, all those references that you include in the work plan will be useful. You don't want the evaluator to have to make a map of your proposal. Provide that map for them and you will gain points. So in a simple example, before we move to deliverables, I think less effective work plans, as I was saying, will be saying, for example, this proposal has 2 main activities, 1 and 2. Phase 1 has 3 tasks. Phase 2 has activities 4, 5, and 6. We believe that your proposal needs to provide more information. Create a good narrative of how you're going to implement the tasks throughout the time and move from month 1 to the last month, again, referring to your deliverables, milestones, and outcomes. Okay, now we can move to the deliverables. So as I was mentioning, the deliverables are important and you should refer to them in the work plan. What are deliverables? These are tangible or intangible goods or services that are produced at any moment during the project. So it's not the final outcome, but these are the building blocks of your projects. They are essential elements to build the final solution. And some examples you can think of: reports or documents, software products, an additional function specification, an upgrade to an existing service that is very key to your project. And they need to comply with some conditions. Deliverables should be about building blocks for the solution. They should show the progress in the implementation. They should be linked directly to the output of your project and be very specific. What have we found in the past? We found that in some proposals, the idea is I will just create a very long list of deliverables. So it looks like we're going to be very, very busy throughout the implementation. We're not really going for that. I think we should be realistic about how much you're going to report throughout the implementation. Without giving you an exact number, I think 6 to 8 deliverables in a year are sufficient to demonstrate progress. Academic reports, event reports, work package reports are not real deliverables. If they do not contribute, if they do not build up the final solution, it's not of your innovation project, it's not really relevant for us to receive an academic report. A project internal document, sometimes these are listed as deliverables. We understand these are very relevant to you, very useful for your coordination in the implementation of a project, but not very relevant to EIT, Urban Mobility. Sometimes there is a proposal that has a reasonable amount and a good description, a good number of deliverables, but there is not enough information for us to understand what the deliverable is going to provide. And the final one, which is very common, is cluster deliverables. In many projects, we find that there is going to be silence for the first 10 months, and then 5, 6 deliverables are planned for the last month. This really does not help the idea of tracking progress. Try to think about how you are going to progress in the implementation and set up your deliverables to be scheduled throughout the implementation of your project. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in terms of impact, I'm going to give it to Sigrid now.
Thank you. Well, we'll talk a bit about city demonstration, which is a very, very important part within the EIT Urban Mobility proposals. So the EIT Urban Mobility innovation calls, they're solely for solutions, products, or services with a minimum TRL of 6, which you all know, and they require testing through a demonstration. What we need to know is how and where those demonstrations will take place. And it should also be outlined in which ways the citizens are beneficiaries. So this is a very, very important part. How do the citizens benefit from your solution? That's really crucial to the solutions for EIT Urban Mobility. If it's only an add-on, then it's not enough. It really should be a crucial part of your proposal, and it should clearly demonstrate how the citizens will benefit from the solution. What you should also outline are existing city resources and infrastructure that will be exploited and built upon during the demonstrations. Some of the common issues that we find are, for example, that there is a very poor description of how the product or solution or service will be demonstrated. So it really needs to be clearly outlined. There are specific sections within the PLAZA registration tool that where you, for the application, where you will have to list in detail each of the minimum three demonstrations that will take place for your proposal. What we also see often is the use of tools for administrators, policy, and surveys instead of actual on-the-street testing for data gathering. So this demonstration needs to be on the street. That's very important as well. What we also often find are, for example, city socioeconomic impact assessments, but they don't have a preceding or proceeding demonstration. So to be clear, you can offer a socioeconomic impact assessment as part of your solution, but it should always have a demonstration. We also see a lot of solutions that propose toolboxes or frameworks or reference models as an output or KPI of the demonstration. Well, to be clear, like we know that there are very many solutions like that already on the market. So this is a bit problematic for us. If you have a toolbox or framework as one of your outputs, please make sure that you really outline how your product is different from others that are already on the market, what's your unique selling point, and how will the citizen benefit from that. Another issue that we often observe is that observer cities assess the demonstration work once it is completed in one city. So that is not a demonstration if you invite representatives from other cities to assess your demonstration. We really need at least 3 different demonstrations in 3 different cities. And also often it is a token engagement of other cities to meet the core criteria. So again, the city demonstrations are a really crucial part of the proposal. It needs to be implemented and thought through from the beginning. It cannot be an add-on in the end where you just call a few cities or add a few cities to be involved in your proposal. It really needs to be a crucial part of it. So overall, this description of the demonstration, it should clearly outline the details of the demonstration, where they are happening, when in the project timeline it will start, and it should have a measurable goal as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? I hand over back to you.
Yes, I will talk a little bit about KPIs. So these are the mechanisms for monitoring and measuring the impact of your project. And they will be very important for the future evaluation and assessment. So provide KPIs that are relevant to the objective of the innovation. So for innovation projects, it's sort of clear, and I think we made progress this year, sort of indicating what's required and the type of additional KPIs that you need to keep in mind. In the past, common issues that we found, scattergun KPIs that are impossible to be tracked or measured. So a list of 8, 10 KPIs that are just very hard for EIT Urban Mobility to see if they are being met or not. No link between the KPIs and the FSM. So as Sigrid was telling you before, there is already a webinar that explains very well the first thread that goes from the KPI all the way to your exploitation, commercialization strategy, and the financial sustainability mechanism that you propose. This was not so well understood in the past. There are no mandatory KPIs. In the case of innovation, this is a product or service or a startup company. How to write winning KPIs? Select these core KPIs that are trackable. So the product or service, be clear about how when you're going to achieve them, and avoid overcommitting. Less effective examples of less effective KPIs, we could tell you from past proposals. Some proposals have said they will deliver 1 product in the first year, and then they jump to 15 products in the second. Of course, evaluators wonder, how are you going to achieve this? And what will be the 15 products that you're going to deliver in the second year? Or they jump into promising 3 startups during the first year. And that raises questions, of course, if there is no consistency between the innovation, the solution that you're planning to deliver, and the commercialization strategy, that will be obvious and take points. So as I was telling you, the next slide, please. We have had many conversations, and we have tried to simplify the KPIs in response to feedback from our community and our EIT Urban Mobility members. The idea is that the KPIs are attainable and that they are related to the implementation of your work. So in the innovation call, you're going to find in each of the challenge areas that we cover a table with the mandatory KPIs. So as I was telling you, you will have to make a choice between a marketed innovation or startup. And in terms of citizen engagements in proposals, that's sort of straightforward because we expect 3 cities to be engaged in the demonstrations. Additional KPIs are listed per challenge area, so you have an idea of what we're looking for in each of the challenge areas. For example, public real improvements, or the number of external and internal events, or the co-funding rate, it's 30% across the project minimum, but you can indicate if perhaps cities or other partners are committing more resources, and that will be an additional KPI from your project. I see there is one question, Emma.
Yes, the question.
Okay, I can't read it now, sorry. It's about the demonstrations. So it says, do the demonstrations need to be really the same, or they can test different aspects, options of the product service in different cities? Yeah, they need to be comparable. I think we need a little bit of common sense here, because you will have to tailor your solution to the specific requirements of the cities where you demonstrate, but it needs to be comparable. So keep that in mind when you put it in your proposal. Sigrid, do you want to add anything to that answer?
Yes, just quickly, we also will have another webinar on the rules and eligibility of the innovation call. And there's also a webinar on the use of living labs. So those two might be interesting for you as well, if you have specific questions about this.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so we're going to cover a little bit the commercialization strategy. Even though this has been very well discussed in the previous webinar, it is important that we reflect upon it in terms of how to present it in your proposal. So the commercialization strategy should highlight the subject of the financial sustainability mechanism. So that's your KPI, your products, your service, your solution. The type of the financial sustainability mechanism. So that is the way that you're planning on returning to EIT Urban Mobility. And this can take the form of equity shares in startups created, or revenue shares from products that are launched to market. The responsible commercializing partner and the return on investment. This is just an indication. This is an estimate that we expect over the next 5 years. Common issues. So the whole financial sustainability mechanism has been, I think, a work of the past year with partners with our community to understand it better, to say how we can strengthen the innovation projects route to market. So sometimes we found a poor articulation of the product service solution route to market, no identification of the lead commercialization partner, the use of marketing instead of commercialization. So think of marketing about dissemination and efforts to create awareness of what you're going to commercialize, but the commercialization strategy is a different description that needs to say, for example, what is the commercialization partner, more or less the timeline that you foresee towards launch to market. No clear link between KPI and financial sustainability mechanism. And in many cases, the use of reports, roadmaps, or toolkits as products. So this has been seen as a weak indication and a warning sign by evaluators. Can I have the next slide, please? As we were saying, this links directly to the sustainability. So describe the financial sustainability mechanism that will be applied. Be specific. Is it going to be a license deal, a revenue share model, equity? Proposals need to provide an estimated quantitative return. No calculation means no contribution. So that's going to weaken your proposal when evaluators think, is this value for money? Is it linked to the KPI, to what the project wants to achieve? And is it really credible? What have we found before? We have found that some proposals select an FSM model, but then have zero financial value. Or that the proposed product, service, and solution is not sufficiently business focused for innovation. So it's not convincing that it will generate a return in the future. Or because, as I was saying, the FSM is something we've been working on, that it has been misunderstood in the past. So in some cases, they have said the use of partner contributions to EIT for project participation as a financial sustainability mechanism, and that will not be a valid FSM. I see. Okay, we will cover the question about consortium development in 1 second, Emma. Okay. Sigrid, do you want to do the risk management and then we?
Yes, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the risk management. So that's often a bit overlooked or not really enough time spent on it. So it's often a bit neglected, and we just want to highlight a few issues here. So the risk management, as you know, is the section that is used to identify and evaluate potential risks to the project. So it should include strategies for mitigation risks as well, of course. What we see often when we look at the risk management plans that of the proposals that we receive, we see that there is only a very limited number of risks identified. So make sure you really have a think about all the potential risks to your project and list them. It's also often very generic and not project specific. So really need to think about what are the exact risks for your specific project, not just general risks that could apply to any project. We also often find that there are very insufficient details on each of the risks. So we don't really know how exactly it would affect your project or what you would do about it. And often we also find that the risk management plan is limited to external risks only. So there is no operational or governance risks included in the plan. And one of the most common issues is that even though the risks are listed, there are very poor mitigation strategies only listed how to go against those risks and mitigate them. So how can we do that better? How can we write a winning risk management plan? You really need to identify the general hurdles, the obvious barriers along the activities path, but also the specific risks that are related to your thematic proposal. What is also really important to EIT is that you look at business and commercial risks and list them and how you would mitigate them. And obviously, you need a suitable mitigation plan specific to each of those risks. And make sure there is a link and a relation between the likelihood and the impact of the risks and the actual mitigation strategy. So if it is a risk that has a very high likelihood or very high impact, of course, you will have to have a mitigation strategy in place that is according to those risks and can mitigate them. As an example, for example, of course, currently a lot of the proposals that identify COVID as a major risk to the activity. So what you need would be a detailed description of how COVID would impact your project. So for example, it could impact activities like citizen engagement activities or the city demonstrations or the partner meetings. And how would you mitigate this? So this could be through online tools or the adaptation of specific activities or the demonstration if there is any reduced mobility in case of a higher incidence of COVID. So all that really needs to be listed detailed to be reasonable and to be credible. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we come to the final section, which is the budget. So of course, the budget section is used to estimate the total cost of the project. It should include all the detailed estimates of all costs that are likely to be incurred before the project is completed. So some of the items that this could include, for example, are salaries for personnel and staff, travel expenses, goods and services, and infrastructure, and so on. So some of the issues we find here is that often there is insufficient or no detail to justify the budget request. So you cannot have a 2-line description for tasks and then list a 750,000 euro budget. It really needs to be corresponding. If you have a high budget request, we need to understand why. Also, what we sometimes find is that one project task has the bulk of the budget. So of course, the budget should be balanced and should be related to the different tasks, and it should not be concentrated in one task, the majority of the budget. And also, we sometimes find that budgets are inflated and they're hiding up to 30%. So make sure that the budgeted amount corresponds to the actual tasks. If the budget is higher than can be justified with the corresponding tasks or activities related to it, of course, the evaluators will notice, and this will be reflect negatively on your proposal. How you can write a winning budget description. Please describe in detail the specific task and how it corresponds to the budgeted amount. So if you remember the red threads we had in the beginning, in the red thread number 2 with the activity, in the last element, we had the tasks within the budget section. So here is where you really have enough word count within the PLAZA application system, where you can describe in detail the task and of the according budget. And we really encourage you to use that word count. Also make sure that not one of the single tasks has the bulk of the budget. So it should be balanced, as I mentioned already. And do not inflate the budgets, because we will notice and the evaluators will notice. Make sure it is reasonable and it is justified. And regarding the personal, subcontracting and travel budgets, we need you to split per task and per partner. Yes, this is a little bit more work to do, but it's really important that this is all listed in detail and split. Okay, can we go to the next slide? I think we're already through. So thank you for attending our webinar. And if there's any more questions, maybe we can
I can address one question about the consortium development. So research organization, public companies, municipalities. We invite you to take a look at the webinar on general eligibility conditions, which has a clear explanation, but for the innovation proposal, the requirement is that we have a consortium, a partnership composition with cities, so minimum of 3 cities, a minimum of 2 partners from EU member states, from industry, 2 industry partners should be engaged, and 1 SME. And the commercializing partner needs to be identified in the consortium, as we said before. Okay. I will read this for Sigrid. I have 2 questions. 1, is the number of cities 3 fixed with the different project durations, 12, 18, 24 months? For example, if someone is submitting a proposal for 12 months, the smallest, is it still mandatory to involve 3 cities, or is 2 enough? And the second question is the proposal's funding dependent on the project duration? In the scenario of active mobility, the information on the EIT Urban Mobility website says that it will select 3 proposals. 2 of them will be funded for 500K and 1 for 400K, but they are not tied with the project durations. Okay, Sigrid, do you want to address?
Okay, the first one, yes, you need 3 city demonstrations, even if it's a 12-month proposal. If your proposal is longer than 12 months, one or several of those demonstrations could be potentially be in a later stage, but you definitely need the 3 different city demonstrations. Sorry, what was the second question?
The second question is more about funding. So it says, is the proposal's funding dependent on the project duration? In the scenario of active mobility, the information on the EIT website says that it will select 3 proposals, 2 of them for 500K and 1 for 400K, but they are not tied with the project durations. Do you want me to answer or?
Yes,
Okay,
go ahead.
So we have tried to provide you with an indication that of the number of projects that will be funded per challenge area. These funding estimates are per year. So for the first year in active mobility, the proposal will get 500K if it is sort of a big project, or 400K for a smaller project. Another question. With respect to budget, when you mention task, do you refer to work package, or should we go into more details, task under each work package? Yes, we refer to work packages. So work packages, as you understand in Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, in PLAZA, you will find them as tasks. So per task is when we refer to work package, exactly. Is there any other question? Okay. We will give you a few moments in case something comes to mind, but we want to remind you that you can approach us later on, and that we are also updating a frequently asked questions file that will be in the EIT Urban Mobility website. So if other questions come to mind about the innovation call, you can reach us in Innovation Call 2022 or call 2022 at eitUrbanMobility.eu. Perhaps I can clarify over here that Innovation Call 2022 is more suited for content questions that are very specific to the challenge areas, the type of information that you provide in different sections, while the Call 2022 at EIT Urban Mobility is very related to the administrative sort of side of the call. But you just reach out to us and we will make sure that the right person gets your question and provides an answer. Okay.
So we have a question here about regional authorities. Are they considered cities in terms of demonstrations?
Yes, regional authorities are considered as well equivalent to cities, also municipalities or even districts, but we would advise you not to include a city and its regional authorities separately. So the aim is really to have the demonstrations in 3 different regions or cities across Europe. So of the 3 demonstrations, 2 need to be in different EU countries or associated states. So please be aware of that.
Okay, there is one question about including cities that are not in the EU. So we will advise to the demonstrations in Europe. It's sort of the aim of our program. And especially because of the transition to Horizon Europe, we still have a little bit of uncertainty of how affiliate member states will play out. So I think we will encourage you to focus on European demonstrations. And transport authorities of the cities. Yes, I think when we talk about the city, if the Transport Authority is one of the partners implementing the demonstration, that is a sufficient evidence of a city commitment in your innovation proposal.
So just additionally, there is a specific section for the city demonstration, and you have to just show clearly how the cities will demonstrate and test the product. So that's really important.
I think that is in tab 3, but
Yes,
you
correct,
can,
correct.
yeah.
But again, there is a webinar, and that's on April the 15th for training on the PLAZA tool, if you're not familiar with it. And that's where you see exactly what information has to go into what section of the application tool.
Okay, another question says, can the city be represented by its daughter company if they have a direct relationship between themselves? The daughter company represents the city when dealing with all smart city projects. I think that's a very reasonable partner, and as long as you describe the type of work, the relationship, and use the partner description section to make this clear. If the evaluator understands that this daughter company is in charge of implementing smart city solutions and innovation solutions in the city, shouldn't be a problem. Okay. Owned by the city, are they considered as the city? Yeah, as I was saying with the daughter company, it's if a city has an organization in charge of the implementation of innovation projects in the area of urban mobility or smart cities, that will be sufficient to demonstrate the commitment of the city. But make use of the partner description to make this clear so evaluators don't have questions about the commitment of the city in the demonstration. Okay. I think there are no more questions, Sigrid, so I'll pass it to you if you want to wrap up.
Yes, well, as mentioned, you can always still ask us any questions. You see on the screen the 2 email addresses. One is for the call general questions, which is the call 2022@eiturbanmobility.eu. And then you have for each of the thematic areas for the different calls a specific email address as well. And soon we will publish the frequently asked question document, which will be available on PLAZA. Just as a reminder, PLAZA will be open from April 9th. And I just want to remind you quickly of the upcoming sessions that we still have. So this afternoon, we have the evaluation session, which is the evaluation process explained. Then on April 13, we have the info webinar guidance and rules on innovation, followed by April the 15th, working with living labs in projects, and the PLAZA training introduction to the proposal submission tool PLAZA, as well as on the 20th of April, the integrating risk into innovation. So you can register for these webinars on the B2Match platform, and all recordings will be available on our call website. So thanks again for joining us. We hope this session was useful for you, and good luck with your proposals.
Thank you.